Welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really critical question that I know is on the minds of a lot of us in the employee ownership community. We're going to look at some of the real underlying barriers to scaling EO and maybe challenge some of our usual assumptions. So let's just start with the question that kicks off pretty much every conversation in our field, right? You know the one. If employee ownership is so good, why on earth don't we see more of it? And whenever that question comes up, the answers we hear are almost always the same three things. First, people say there's not enough awareness. Second, there's not enough financing. And third, we just don't have enough resources. But what if those answers are actually distracting us from the real bottleneck? Okay, let's take that first idea, the awareness problem, and really put it to the test with some quick back-of-the-napkin math. This is just a thought exercise based on what I think are some pretty plausible assumptions. So let's just assume for a second that there are at least 1,000 of us in the US making a living by promoting employee ownership. Now, if each one of us introduces the concept to just one new business owner a month, that works out to 12,000 business owners becoming aware of EO every single year. Now let's look at what actually happens. The data shows we get about 300 new employee-owned companies a year. Let's be generous. Let's run that up to 500 to make sure we're including worker co-ops and employee ownership trusts, where the data's a little harder to pin down. Okay, so the math here is, well, it's pretty simple and really stark. If 12,000 owners get introduced to the idea, but only 500 actually make the transition, that means every year we fail to convert 11,500 business owners who were already aware of employee ownership. And this really shows you the problem, doesn't it? It's not a lack of awareness at the very top of the funnel. It's a massive, massive drop-off somewhere between interest and conversion. The real blocker is what happens after an owner says, that sounds interesting. All right, what about that second reason we always hear, a lack of financing? Let's really dig in and ask, who does a lack of capital truly affect? For the vast majority, we're talking about the 5.9 million US businesses with under 100 employees, finding an outside buyer just isn't realistic. So their choice often comes down to two things. Option one, shut down the business and just get the liquidation value for their equipment, or option two, seller finance an employee ownership transition. With that, they get the full fair market value paid out over time, and they still have that liquidation value as a backup. For the owner, the second option is just clearly better. And we know this works. Look at the UK. External financing for these kinds of deals is really rare over there. So what happens? Well, sellers end up financing over 90% of the transitions themselves. It proves that this is a totally viable path, not a deal breaker. And finally, let's look at that third idea, that we just don't have enough resources. Again, a little napkin math can give us a whole new perspective. So let's go back to our assumption of 1,000 people working in the ESO field. And let's say the fully loaded cost for each person, salary, benefits, overhead, is about $150,000. Well, that adds up to a collective spend of $150 million a year on advocacy. And here's the kicker. If you take that $150 million and divide it by the 500 businesses that actually transition each year, that comes out to an indirect advocacy cost of $300,000 for every single conversion. So the problem really isn't the amount of money we're spending, it's how effectively we're spending it. So once we kind of poke holes in those three common arguments, the real bottleneck starts to come into focus. And it is a confusing, fragmented, and frankly broken journey for the business owners who are actually trying to move forward. To get a feel for just how frustrating this is, just imagine for a second. What if buying a plane ticket worked the way our current employee ownership toolkit does? You'd be told to first go study all of Boeing's different plane models. Then you'd be handed a directory of every airline out there. After that, you'd have to read a bunch of research papers on flight routes you're not even taking. And finally, you'd have to go to a separate agent to book each leg of your trip. It's ridiculous, right? You'd never do it. But that's exactly what we ask business owners to do. We just throw research reports and directories and a disconnected list of advisors at them instead of giving them a clear path. So what's the solution? Well, it's pretty clear. We need to stop what we're doing and start building the infrastructure for a seamless journey, one that actually builds an owner's confidence from that first spark of interest all the way to a successful transition. And that means creating integrated tools. For instance, owners need something like a Day Zero guide that clearly benchmarks employee ownership against all their other exit options.
They need an aha planner that can give them a personalized look at the financial feasibility. The whole point is to build an infrastructure that gives owners clarity and confidence. And that's exactly the kind of work organizations like Zolidar are focused on.
Getting this right means we as a community have to stop asking the same old questions and start asking the ones that actually address the true bottleneck. So instead of our usual talking points, we should be asking ourselves, 1. What is the actual bottleneck stopping owners from moving forward? 2. What truly builds confidence in a business owner to take this leap? And 3. How should we really be measuring our own success? It shouldn't be about effort. It should be about successful transitions per dollar invested. If we can start answering these questions correctly, we can finally build the foundation that allows employee ownership to scale. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't just more awareness, it's more conversions.